also, I do like the new logo
New
gear.
logo's nice.
Should be wearing red on NC State.
Sorry about putting you off the island, Alan.
Perfect. All right, I'd like to call to order tonight's Apex Parks Recreation and Cultural Resources Advisory Commission meeting. Just as a reminder, we are live streaming and everything is being taped, so just remember that. Let's start with an invocation. So I just ask you to just bow your head for just a moment of silence. Okay, next is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Awesome, thank you. Okay. First on the agenda is approval of the August 31st, 2022 meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor, say
Aye.
all those opposed, say nay. Okay, meeting minutes approved. So that leaves us to the director's report.
So my director's report tonight is going to be introducing people to you.
Perfect.
So we'll start out with Austin Ohms. If you could walk up to the mic and kind of introduce yourself to everybody. So
Ouch.
yeah,
Address the mic.
Austin
Got lots
comes
of
to us
questions.
from Holly Springs, but I'm going to let him kind of give you some details about how he got here.
I did come from Holly Springs. Greg said I'm Austin Ohms. Happy to be here. Thank you guys for having me. Was in Holly Springs for about 3 years. Decided to come over to Peak Good Living. Excited to open up Pleasant Park and the opportunities that are happening over here. I was in Sampson County before that for a couple of years doing programming and field maintenance. So it was good to have that experience on that side. And other than that, thank you guys for having me.
Craig's much better than Matt Beard, by the way. I'm just kidding. Barbara.
So what's your
Sorry,
role?
Matt. Hope you're not watching.
I'm a
town?
athletic program specialist, recreation specialist in
Oh, sorry.
athletics. Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Great, well,
Under
welcome.
Yeah,
Patrick.
welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Mr. Jason Simpson. He comes to us from Raleigh. And he is our, I should have introduced him as
Yeah.
what position he was in, but community center manager. John Brown, community center manager.
Yep, so I'm Jason. I came from the city of Raleigh where I was the athletic director for the past 7.5 years. Prior to that, I was with the town of Morrisville for about 8.5 years. Prior to that, I was in Lee County, Sanford, Parks and Recreation for 2 years, and then Ashboro a year prior to that with Ashboro Parks and Rec. So graduated from NC State in 2003.
Go back.
And
back.
Go back.
There you go. Woo woo.
And this guy's my neighbor. And I'm an Apex resident, have been for 15 years.
Oh, okay.
So,
Well, welcome
to
to
have you.
welcome to
Welcome.
Apex.
Thank you, Jason. And that's all I have.
You're not going to introduce Patrick again?
Patrick's here, and
Thanks for
I
coming,
think
Patrick.
I told everybody, but Patrick is our Pleasant Park manager. So he was promoted to the Pleasant Park manager position
Congratulations.
in April. So
Congrats.
Great.
Once again, yeah, congrats. Perfect. That's all?
that's all I got.
So what about projects and operations report?
Unless y'all have any questions, everything is in the agenda.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
I have a comment, and that is that when I've gone through Pleasant Park, it's looking extremely exciting.
It is
beat me
it's
to
an
it.
amazing facility. I say that to everybody. If you get an opportunity, if you want to set up a meeting with me to go out, just let me know. We'll take a look.
Beat me to it. I completely agree. I looked at it a few months ago and just again last week, and it just blows my mind.
When
Wonderful.
roofs go on top of buildings, it kind of changes the look of things too, so it helps it out. But, yeah, it looks really good right now.
Fantastic. Okay, any other comments? Questions? No? Okay, for the program report, nothing. Chairman's report, I have nothing. That leaves public comment. Is there anybody here for public comment?
Public.
No? Going once? Okay. No public comment. No old business. Wow, this is going to be a quick meeting. For new business, Angela.
You don't let me start talking. It'll slow you down a lot.
We have a record to break from
That
last
is-
All right, well,
Motion to approve.
now these two agenda items, sorry.
week. Bye, guys.
Thank y'all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're trying to do something a little bit different for everyone. In addition to including our master plan map for you to review, where you get to see the whole plan map and projects and recommendations that you're seeing contextually for the whole process, we're also going to provide you with zoomed in versions that we can then even further zoom in if we need to. But at least you'll be seeing this, and that way when it's printed and published and stuff, people can, they're not as familiar with the map, they'll be able to see this in more detail. So I showed you the overall, but we'll go straight to this as far as the first item. So as we have seen development occur south of Hume Olive and sort of north and south of Old US 1 and along that sort of southwest quadrant of the town, one of the things that was added a few years ago with the Bike Apex Plan and the Transportation and Comprehensive Plan adoption, the 2045 plan, we had added some street side greenways along corridors that were identified as those that we wanted to maintain in a more rural character. The main one that first came to light was the Reagan Road west side of that, where there's a lot of large lot horse farms. And the idea was that if development started to transition from those larger lots, they wanted to maintain that feeling of those rural pastoral views. Same thing happened on Hume Olive Road, west of Richardson, south side. And we have several projects that you reviewed that are coming online. The Yumiwara Farms project, the retreat at Friendship Station, which you saw as the Heelan Tract. And ultimately Olive Farm Park will build those same meandering street side greenway corridor from Richardson Road west. But prior to that adoption and ongoing is the Friendship Station project, which is pretty much at the intersection of Hume Olive and Richardson Road, west of the Apex Friendship campus, and the extension of Richardson Road, ultimately south all the way to US 1. And for some reason, while that project was being reviewed, we weren't quite ready with the street side greenway concept. That plan hadn't been adopted. The project was rezoned, but after the fact, street side greenway was added to the west side of Richardson Road. But what we're seeing as we see those parcels come in for site plan for the residential development, and then ultimately up at the intersection of Hume Olive and Richardson Road, we'll have some non-residential components which don't usually provide us with greenways because they don't have any residential units that would do a land dedication or fee in lieu. So we can ask for them, but we as Parks and Rec getting greenway don't really have a mechanism to implement the plan as greenway with credit for construction. So as we started looking at the Richardson Road alignment, the corridor, the development pattern, land use plan, which also shows industrial south of Old US 1 to US 1, we started to realize that that really wasn't going to have a rural pastoral streetscape. And so what we're hoping to do is to recommend a change from street side greenway to side path along the west side of Richardson Road. The east side was already planning for street side green or for side path, and what we're wanting to do and planning also is supportive of is transitioning that whole north to south section from Hume Olive down to Old US 1 along Richardson Road back to side path. You'll still have a 10-foot bike ped facility. It just won't meander in a 50-foot wide streetscape buffer, and it'll be easier to implement. And as a requirement of transportation, it will get built with projects. So that's the first recommendation here, is to amend the plan to show side path along the west side of Richardson Road, south of Hume Olive to US 1, versus it being street side greenway. The secondary request is coming because there's a small tract of land left sort of between the school campus, conservation area, and the Friendship Station, there's so many out there. Sorry.
Right.
Friendship Station, there's a long linear parcel that kind of is the last piece to fill the gap there. And our Little Beaver Creek Greenway was sort of is a combination of side path and greenway from Hume Olive Road south of the school campus all the way out to basically the New Hope Valley Rail corridor. And so while we had planned for this to be greenway, there's literally almost no property to put a greenway in. And so there's a proposed project that's coming online soon. They're planning to submit for rezoning, and they are agreeable to amending that to have side path versus street side greenway. They can put it on the sides of the lots and provide that 10-foot connection that will ultimately connect to 2 spots on the school campus and then all the way long-term east to Hume Olive Road. So the second is just an amendment from greenway to side path. This corridor is made up of a combination of both already, so it's not going to impact the continuation of that, but it also allow us to have that be built. So this is our exhibit, and just for you to see a little bit more, these are the exhibits related to the transportation plan. So they're supporting that same concept. And here, because of the way that their mapping is done, you can see the conservation buffer that's in place. And there's a very, very limited amount of disturbance that can occur only for the Richardson Road right-of-way. And there was a lot of back and forth that have happened to maintain that conservation easement but allow that impact, including an additional dedication of conservation land to the west. So we're asking for support of both of those plan amendments, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have about them.
Staff can still ask for the street side greenways south on Richardson Road. If you continue south, you can still ask development to do the greenway versus side path, correct?
South of Old US 1, most of this area is industrial.
Right. But still, you can,
Land use plan, they'll build it as, ideally a side path.
well, they're gonna end up with a 30 to 50 foot buffer along the frontage of Richardson Road anyway, because it's major thoroughfare. So my point is that the meandering can still be there. Staff can ask them to still do the meandering greenway.
I think we could ask for a design to be
That's what I'm,
a little bit different, but the difference being that it would be built as a transportation requirement, so it's required to be built, versus when we ask for it in some of those properties, it would be,
I mean, worst case is we get the side path. Best case is we still get the meandering greenway that acts as a side path. It's still a 10-foot wide path
correct.
either way.
In all aspects, it's a 10-foot wide path. The location of it would be based on what the development pattern looks like.
I think I'd support that with staff still asking them to do a meandering path through there, as can you guys do this as an upgrade, with the fallback being you're gonna do side path. But I would just like staff, when development comes in that area, just to remember to say, hey, can you guys look at doing a meandering? Because that's more residential west of Richardson Road, south of Old US 1. Those are big lots, and I'm not sure when that's gonna develop. The
Right.
east side will develop as industrial.
Correct.
Or should.
Correct.
But the west side will probably still be more of a residential feel to it.
Right.
So I'd,
So from us, the direction would be that at the time, if and when those properties start to redevelop, that we would look at location. But it has to fall into one or the other category. There isn't an in-between. And we are looking, this may come about later, but we are considering a classification of side path called a rural side path, which this might fall into. We just don't have that in place yet. And we're not ready to make a recommendation on that. But it's addressing sort of that idea of where it shouldn't be right up against back of curb. It should be farther away.
right.
What are the classifications now? Sidewalk,
So we have sidewalk, we have side path, which is both are transportation and usually within the right of way. So they're very close to the street or the curb.
Right.
And we have street side greenway, which is greenway that meanders within 5 to 50 feet from the road right of way.
Okay.
And then we have Greenway, which is within a Greenway easement that can be anywhere,
Not tied to
not tied to a road and not always by a creek, or it could be in a utility corridor. So it's literally sort of aligned with how we plan. And so those are sort of the classifications. All the greenways come to Parks and Rec for maintenance and provision. What we don't have right now is a mechanism that says they are required and you must build them no matter what type of development. We only have them where we get them or where they're required for residential development. So we've had a few times where we've had a greenway corridor alignment shown on our plans, and we have not been able to secure an easement through a non-residential site. We could pursue it in other mechanisms, but a development wouldn't have to provide that greenway or the easement for approval.
But
And so-
side path would require,
Side path as a transportation plan. So some of the master plan is going to be a recommendation that we assess that, because other communities do implement greenway construction differently. And so we need to know whether or not we're aligned with our neighboring communities and the common prevailing winds of how you get those constructed. We right now give you credit against your fees for construction. Other places require it. So we're
Is
going to
is it
evaluate
only if it's greenway or side path that it's under Parks and Rec purview for maintenance also?
that. Greenway is under Parks and Rec. Side path is transportation, so it's with our streets. So streets, sidewalks, and side paths are,
Sorry, not side path.
Others.
If it was a street side greenway, if it's within that kind of 50-foot, is that then considered under?
That's Parks and Rec.
Versus transportation?
for the most part, the projects that have been approved, because it's their front door for the neighborhoods, if you will, we ask that there be none of their required or provided landscaping within our easement. And in some cases, where there's been discussion about the fact that all of the landscaping, even as much as the grass up to the edge of the pavement, would be maintained by the HOA, and that we would, in a sense, keep the trail surface clean and safe. Because even some of the provisions of bollards and trash and recycling receptacles and stuff, we normally put them right at the street entrance to the greenway. But in that case, a lot of times it's at the front door of their entry monuments and, everything else. And so you have to pull those back anyway. And so,
Can those plants then count towards their buffer requirements?
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I was gonna say,
So
wait.
we're not, right.
Oh, yes.
Right. So basically,
Got
we're tucking ourselves in and winding through whatever they choose. But the idea is, rather than them planting a row of trees with a straight line shot in front of it, they meander and the trees would go on either side.
And they count towards their requirement.
And
They would have
it
to
all
plant
meets their
anyway.
requirements, right?
And that's the reason asking, even though the plan shows a side path, having staff have the ability to ask the developer on the west side of Richardson Road to say,
Pull it away from
it would
the
be
curb.
much better, you have to do a minimum of 30-foot buffer along those major thoroughfares anyway.
Right.
So it's not like it's taking away from their usable space. They still have to plant it, it's gotta be landscaped, it just gives a different look, whether it's residential or commercial. I would just like staff to have the ability to ask the question. If they come back and say no because of some reason, that's fine, but I would like staff to just make sure that,
But at minimum, it's classifying it as side path, it is now required. to be-
correct.
Right.
Worst case is you get a 10-foot sidewalk,
Right.
which is a side path.
Side path is 5 feet off the road?
Traditionally, yes, but we do have places where side path, because of saving trees or
Sure.
utilities or whatever, or a narrowing along a bridge, boardwalk crossing or whatever, ends up being right at back of curb. But the idea is a 2-foot minimum offset, which on most of our road cross sections, the most I've seen is us having the side path overlap 2 feet, and then they just add it as an access easement adjacent to the right of way. And
The
so
side
it's
path is 10 feet
10
versus the
feet.
5 feet.
10 feet. It's typically asphalt. There are certain scenarios where it becomes concrete, but for the most part, it's asphalt.
And,
Go ahead.
so, so by making it the side path, it'll then become priority because it's transportation. So, because I have a hard time moving away from the street side greenways to side path, and we've had that conversation, but I also get it, and I want to make sure if this creates connectivity and accessibility and it's getting where we need to go and pushing the plan forward, then I'm not against it, but I just want to, I think you make a really good point about, can we ask the developers to try to prioritize making these have the greenway feel, even if they're in the street side. And I'm really excited to hear that you're looking at maybe finding a third classification for that in between. I think, if I'm correct, Cary has something, as does maybe Chapel Hill.
Well, so our street side greenway reflects Cary's,
Cary's. But the rural.
more rural
or
character, west side.
Okay, but that rural, that's other classification you mentioned, so.
Right.
That's always my issue, because once you set that precedent of, all right, now it's gonna be side path, is every developer, and I don't know enough, but are they gonna want that because it's the path of least resistance, it's the simplest versus maintaining that feel of the greenways connectivity. So I'm not against it, I'm not necessarily gonna say I'm gonna vote no on it, I want to understand, to your point, right, that like, can we prioritize that feel, that part of town is beautiful, obviously development's important, it's gonna happen and stuff, but also how do we maintain that and the connectivity? What's the, when it becomes on the streets, does that also require them to do like any kind of crosswalks and stuff and more connectivity there, or does that not account
For
for it?
each street section, we work with there's a transportation team from planning, engineering, and Parks and Rec, and we meet on every project and assess crossings, curb ramps, and we've even done some additional designs of standard specifications that are gonna come out soon, to address some ways that the way to design to connect to the greenway from a street or from a sidewalk is not always exactly to ramp up and to meet a higher level. Sometimes the grades all go away from the street, and so we're working on a detail where you go from street grade down and you have return curbs. So we're definitely working towards how all of those pieces fit together. But the classification of sidewalk or side path, it's more about where are we crossing? Is it mid-block? Is it at an intersection? Is there a signal? What types of, other mechanisms for signage and stuff is available? Because that comes from what happens on the road more so than what happens from us.
I understand the proximity to the high school is pretty close, right? It's basically,
Yes.
so, because thinking that's gonna have, in theory, should have a lot of traffic from kids and whatnot, so.
Right. And the second piece, let me go back to our plan because it shows it a little bit better, is ties to this connection here, which is kind of hidden. Hand over. So we have an easement and are working with the Apex Friendship Campus. A section of Friendship Station is already planning to build a component of, a portion of this little connection here. We're working with them to build the bridge across to the school campus, getting permission from Wake County Schools to be on the campus. Whether or not we can have the connection all the way up to the front of the school. And then this new project will build the final piece. So we will have east to west to Richardson Road into all of this development, plus all of this development connected to the school campus at the front of the elementary school. We also already have an easement here to the sort of ball field area at the back of the school campus between the high school and the middle school. And that would be appropriate to build if this area redevelopment, and we have the east to west on the south side of the school campus. But for now, this project and this alignment here would get us onto the school campus. And we're working with the project manager for the Friendship Campus they're working with Campo on safe routes to school and some other things that will help us. But again, we were fortunate enough that when they got extra land and they redeveloped that school campus site to make the campus or the school bigger, we were able to find a location that linked to an area of the school campus that they felt the most comfortable with. So in a sense, the access onto the school campus site is pretty much forward facing. And so you're not like some of our other schools where you're coming in the backside, you're actually coming into a front pedestrian loop area that buses or carpool, I don't know which one it was, ended up being, would be right there. So you're people coming to school on that would be visible. People walking on it in the middle of the day would be away from the back doors of the campus. So, so that's something we've been working on.
Thank you for the clarification.
There's that one too. Any other
Awesome.
questions?
Any other comments, questions? It looks like to me, we've got 3 items. So like, other than like a footnote, Jeff, do we need to make a suggestion at least? I mean, there's,
I made my comments known to staff, and I trust staff will go into these meetings. If, I mean, that's gonna be a while out for development.
well, yeah, but I mean, at least it's reflected. I mean, it's, we can call it the aesthetics clause.
Maybe Craig can put it into the meeting minutes, and if anybody ever reads them in the future, they'll see them. I'm being
No, but I think you make a really good point. I'd like, to me, I would be very hesitant to vote moving away from the street side greenway. I'm a big proponent of that, but I also understand the utility and the reasoning and the connection. So I like what you're putting across, right? I think it's really important that we do that. I also don't want to put y'all in a position where that's the only thing that's going to happen moving forward at some point. Not that would happen, but
Right.
people turn to look at precedent, right? So, but yeah, I agree. If they're
So you're looking for a motion, I mean, unless you guys are good, make a motion to approve staff's recommendation for the modifications to the master plan with a caveat that we
There you
would
go.
appreciate staff discussing with any future development on the western side of Richardson Road to look at street side greenway in lieu of the street side path.
Side path.
You got that, Angela, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And I potentially could see that somewhere from this conservation easement south.
Correct.
That we might, because we have street side greenway along the future linear park as well, that we might be able to make that this rural, but we have to look at that as the whole plan update, part of the master plan.
And correct me if I'm wrong, from a reimbursement standpoint, if it goes in as side path, the developer gets a 50% reimbursement on the cost versus a street side greenway's 100% reimbursement towards parks and rec fees, if it's residential.
If it's greenway.
If it's,
When they
right,
switch, if we change this category to side path, then they pay for it 100%.
or they can come back and ask for the modification of the master plan and get reimbursed 100%.
They could come back for a plan amendment similar to what we're doing now and say, we want to build it meandering and we would like credit.
Okay,
And then we would be able to decide how that works.
okay.
So,
Okay, so is
That's my
that a
motion.
standing
Was a
motion?
motion.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Perfect, all right, that one passes. So number 2, any comments or questions on the second one Angela talked about?
No, it wasn't that.
I think
Was
that
that for-
was-
We
made a
that
motion for
encompassed
both
of them. That
Both of them
encompassed
together?
Yeah.
I
Okay,
think
so
my motion was for both.
included both.
Right, was for both the Richardson Road adjustment and the change to the piece in the southwest corner of the
Perfect.
school system.
perfect. So that's good, awesome.
all right.
All right, thank you, Angela.
Sure.
So that leaves motion to adjourn.
No,
No, that's number 2.
number 2.
My bad, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. Forgive me. Yes, number 2.
All right, so again, full context of the Chapel Ridge North PUD. You've actually seen this before. It is coming back to us because they added additional land. So there was a single-family lot that was not included. That's just above this little road connection into Hempstead. They have since added that land to the project. The intent is not to change the maximum number of units of apartments, which was 370. But because there was an increase in land area, we're required to bring it back to you. Our recommendation is still the same, that it would be a fee in lieu, as while there's another development that's been approved in this area, there's still some single-family lots that remain. And there is, this is outside of any land dedication area and does not have direct access to the Beaver Creek Greenway. And so there is on-street sidewalk, side path in this area that would provide access to the Greenway. And we're gonna continue to look, I think, from the master plan perspective of if there's a way where these several lots that are gonna remain as single-family And these larger lots, maybe in the future, there's a connection option down to Beaver Creek. But right now, with the other large lots, you would get a segment built for one lot width and then have a dead end anyway. So, but this project doesn't really get impacted by that. So we have a recommendation for a fee in lieu for a total of 370 multifamily residential units.
And that's the same recommendation that they just got rezoned.
Yes, they're.
That project just got rezoned like a month ago, or
Yes, but they came back and added
the
this
additional land, but
acreage.
same recommendation that you have.
Yes. It's the same as we made last time.
Just
That was
clarifying,
approved.
making sure.
So,
So the rate then is the same because it's per unit?
yes, because I believe it originally went to council in 2022.
Gotcha.
So this is just it's a cleanup and making sure that because at some point they could come back and decide they have more acreage, they want more units, and we just need to track that for every step that changes the outline, the acreage or the unit requirements we bring back to you, just
That makes sense.
Gotcha.
so that we're addressing that.
All right, I'll make a recommendation for the fee in lieu for the 370 multifamily residential units.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you, Angela. Now we have a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a motion?
Motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, we're adjourned.